Good stuff there. All right, so that's the run game thought process for Johnny Mack coming in this year. John, I want to stick on the offense. We're going to switch over to defense here in a little bit. When it comes to the tight end position this year, how do you see this? How do you see this playing out in terms of who's on the field, how much they're on the field? Is it 11 personnel, 12 personnel, 13 personnel? Something McVay did a lot last year. How do you kind of see the Eagles run or a tight end rotation shaping up this year for the 2026 season?
Well, I think it's going to be a lot of Dallas Goederts and a lot of Johnny Mundt. And I think the scraps will continue from there. So I don't think you have the personnel to run a lot of 13. And I'm not sure you want the person. Like, I don't think Sean McVay wants to run 13. I think he did because that's the personnel, and he deserves credit for shifting from his usual mindset. But he'd prefer to be a heavy 11 team. Nobody would prefer to run more 11 than Sean McVay. But he didn't have the receivers to do it last year. And he had a bunch of tight ends, so he used them. And they even got more this year. They got Max Clare as a guy that I thought would have been a great fit for the Eagles. They drafted him in the second round. So now you have Parkinson, Higbee, Ferguson, Clare, Davis Allen. I mean, they are just loaded at tight end. So I think they're going to be a heavy 12-13 team again. I don't think the Eagles have the blockers to do that. If you look at their third and fourth, they're both receivers and very, very poor blockers. So, I think it's going to be a lot of Dallas Goedert and Johnny Mundt, who is the one blocker they do have at tight end. So he's got a big advantage to make the team. And, weird de facto, if you're like, who can't get hurt? Johnny Mundt can't get hurt.
Oh, gosh. Johnny Mundt? I see Brian Fleming in the chat. He says Mundt cake is this year's Harrison Bryant. McMullen, you disagree, it sounds like.
Well, he could be if Max Clare, that they drafted Max Clare. Yeah, I would have been on board. They don't have it. I guess if you want to move Cam Latu back to tight end from fullback, maybe he could do it. I haven't seen enough of Stone Smart, but I don't know if he can do it. But I think he was a quarterback in college as well early in his career. So I don't know a ton about Stone Smart, but generally, if you're a quarterback who shifts into a tight end, you're not a good blocker. That's where Eli Stowers is. So I don't think that's the strength of his game. More a special teams guy, I would say. Daquan Wright had a nice big time seam pass from Cole Payton at the OTA the other day. Undrafted kid, he's got some size, but he's more of a receiver. EJ Jenkins is actually, was a college receiver who was just oversized, so they moved him to tight end. Now, behind the scenes, he's really big, and I've heard positive sort of declarations about his blocking ability. So he seems to be taking to it. So maybe he could jump up. But I mean, Johnny Mundt's a proven blocker at the NFL level. Now he's never played a ton, so it's not like I think his career high in snaps is 430 or something like that, 450. So he's always been a third tight end. So I'm not going to sit here and be like that Harrison Bryant fan from last year and say, he's a different. I'm just saying they don't have anybody else for that role.
Right. I get what you're saying.
And if they
So
did, like,
where is the path then, John, for the number 54 overall pick in the draft to get on the football field and make a difference and make an impact? Nowhere.
well, I think you're going to have specific packages, but I don't think you can play them consistently and that's what I heard from before the Eagles even drafted him. It's like from one of the draft guys I talked to, it's like, if you draft these guys who can't do one or the other, and it works both ways. If you're not a good receiver, but you're just a blocker, it works both ways. You become very, easy to read from a tendency standpoint. And it becomes a problem ultimately. You got to be able to do both at least an acceptable level. And that's one of the reasons why, if you think about this particular offense and we look at the George Kittles being number one, but we look at the Rams, we look at the Packers, they always have a more, and that's why I focused on Max Clare. I'm like, they always have that type of guy in these offenses. And the Eagles just went with the, Madden player who had the highest Madden rig. He's a great receiver. But, he played, I think, 40% of the snaps at Vandy. Or 40% of the running snaps at Vandy. It's like at Vanderbilt, which was a good college team, it's no longer, the dregs of the SEC. That has been a really good team, partially because of Eli Stowers, most notably Diego Pavia playing quarterback. But the point I'm trying to make is he wasn't a full-time player at Vanderbilt because of his blocking deficiencies. Why do people think he's going to be a essentially not a full-time, but a heavy snap guy in the NFL with the Philadelphia Eagles?
I mean, are they going to line him up here and there as a third wide receiver?
Yeah, they already did it at OTAs. I saw, the one play I mentioned on the show. It really the only play I noticed. I don't remember. We'll ask Caden. Caden Steele's going to be on in hour 2. I don't think he was targeted. Obviously there's no replays. And, you got to be hyper focused on practice. You miss stuff. But the one time I noticed him, he was lined out wide. Inside, not outside the numbers, but still inside, but lined up way outside. It wasn't a condensed set. And they used it as a decoy to throw it underneath to Will Shipley on that particular play. And that was, but again, if you look at him in college, he was not a full-time player there. So he's not going to be a full-time player as a rookie in the NFL. He needs to get in an NFL weight program, strength program, and he needs to improve his blocking to be more than a situational guy you're trying to create matchups for and maybe get loose in a particular situation, which I think, they'll have packages for him. But I don't think he's ready from the blocking perspective.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see. I think that 54 overall pick's got to get on the damn football field. Johnny Mack, I don't know if he will. I get what you're saying, but we'll find out what they do. I can't believe Johnny Mundt. If that guy goes down, the Eagles are going to be tough sledding, is what Johnny Mack's telling me. It's kind of,
you'll have guys, like I said.
Kind of like Johnny Wilson last year. I remember you said, and everybody in our chat was like, oh, shut up, McMullen. Who cares that Johnny Wilson got hurt? You were like, guys, this might be a big deal. Johnny Wilson does a lot in the blocking game for this team. Well, we don't know what the season would have looked like if he was out there, but maybe it did have a bigger impact. Kind of what it reminds me of here this year with Johnny Mundt. Maybe they need him out there for that reason.
And I'm not trying to say he's a big-time player. He's a role player, but, he plays a role that they don't have unless, somebody steps up. And maybe that's Latu, maybe it's EJ Jenkins. But they don't have anybody to take that role. So, when I said before the draft, don't put Grant Calcaterra in Penn, don't put Johnny Mundt in Penn, because if they draft a tight end, depending on what they draft, a blocker or a guy who can block or a receiver, you can all of a sudden cross them out. Well, you can cross Grant Calcaterra out, barring injury. Might even get traded. They don't have a blocker, so Johnny's in till they find a blocker.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens.